Hi, my name is Evan, and I'm here today to bring the build guide for Big Greg. I'm going to start with the printed pieces, then go into the pieces that will come in the parts kit, then go over the tools that you'll need to build it. Alright, getting right into it. Have the grip right and left, the magwell body, follower, and cap. These would be the exact same for the full length, I just only have the short length here to demonstrate. Magwell, catch holder, spring guide, bolt guide, breech, front. Back down here, we have the spacer, the plunger, and this is the spacer for the magwell to go to the short length mags. The plunger, pusher rear, pusher front, the handle, carry handle, the grip, the mag release, the two knobs for the bolt handle. This is a metal catch, which is an optional piece, but I will be putting it in mine. Two outside pieces for the carry handle, the trigger, trigger guard, the thumb screw at the front to tension the blaster together. This is the catch. This is part of the catch pusher, which is only needed for the metal one. This is the catch pusher. 0-degree riser, which goes behind the handle. The barrel nut for the cullet. Two different parts of the handle. The main part of the stock, TPU part of the stock, the flared magwell, and the B-car. And here we have what the printed catch will look like. Now we can get on to the parts kit. Parts kit is going to come with two springs. There is a weaker and a stronger one. They can be used individually or together to have a much higher power. We will have the plunger tube. This is a larger example than what will come with yours, but I'm just going to be using it as we're building a different version of Greg for this build video, but all of the directions will still apply the same. We'll have this long tube, which is the barrel. Two long lengths of flat bar, which go the length of the blaster, along with another long length of threaded rod, and these are in a triangle, which pull the blaster together. We have another piece of threaded rod, which serves as the trigger linkage to go from the catch pusher to the trigger itself. We would have another piece of threaded rod for the plunger. I don't have that, but it's represented by this. We're going to have two thick O-rings, and these go at the base of the pusher rear. We will have 1 to 2 square profile O-rings for the plunger, depending on the version. We'll have a variety of bolts here, which are part of the carry handle, and also go to the rear of the blaster to secure the long bars. These go in the bolts. These go in the handle of the bolts themselves, and these two are for securing the flat bar at the front. These are part of the 0-degree riser. All of these small 3x14mm pins serve as alignment knobs between each one of the pieces so that nothing can slide past each other. This is the handful of screws that you're going to need for different parts of assembly. The 3x25mm pins, which are used for the mag release and the catch pusher. We would have a moose nut, but I don't have that, but that will come with the kit. I just have this for there today. We have a washer, which is part of the plunger. We have a larger spring, which is for the catch. A smaller spring, which is for the mag release. One larger nut, which will be for the thumb screw at the front to tension the blaster together. 4 smaller nuts, which will be part of the assembly of the 0-degree riser. 3 plastic stop nuts, which are at the top of the plunger. And we have 2 heat set inserts. One is for the trigger. One is for the back of the spring guide that tensions the whole blaster together. We'll have 1 to 2 drum springs in there for your mag. That's what makes the mag work. We'll have a piece of elastic for the trigger. A bunch of bearings and pins, if you've got that version, for the B-car. And then lastly, our O-rings, which is one smaller one for the pusher front. The one in the package will be for in between the pusher front and pusher rear. And the larger will be for the barrel collet that goes down the barrel. That will be all of the parts that you will get with your parts kit, and we can now move on to the tools that you will need. So, you're going to need a small paper plate, piece of disposable something. I'm just going to be using some cardboard so that you can use epoxy, preferably epoxy, then preferably epoxy over super glue, whatever your favorite lube is. One of these cutters, forgetting the name off the top of my head, but burr remover, small screwdriver for the number 4 screws, a Sharpie, an X-Acto blade, some type of tool to apply the epoxy. I'm using a broken drumstick, Allen wrenches, a file, some isopropyl, a bunch of paper towels, a hammer, and a pair of pliers. And that should be everything that you need to put Greg together. We can now move on to the first steps of assembly. We will now get right into the build. The first thing that we're going to want to do is get all the pieces together to prepare making our plunger tube assembly. To do this, we're going to want to grab the plunger tube itself, the 2 larger O-rings, the pusher rear, and the pusher front. These are going to look slightly different from the versions that you'll be working with, but slightly different version I'm working on, but the instructions are the same. You're going to want to grab the O-ring in between, which will be the one in the package. You're also going to need your X-Acto blade, your epoxy, some paper towels, the isopropyl, and a Sharpie. Also the tool to apply the epoxy. So, getting right into it, we will clean off the surfaces that we intend on gluing to ensure a good application. Put some isopropyl on a piece of paper towel. Find out very quickly if you have any cuts on your hand. And we're going to want to clean off the inside with one of the ends of the polycarbonate tube. Also, give a nice wipe off the side of the pusher rear, assuming you are using PLA or PLA+. Alright, once those are clean, we can start by taking our 2 larger O-rings and putting them onto the back of the pusher rear that we just cleaned off so that we can do a dry fit. Put the O-rings on. Once they're both on there, the plunger tube back, make sure it's dry, and begin to dry fit. It's going to be a little bit difficult to get them on there, but slowly but surely, through twisting, a little bit of back and forth movement, they will go on. They are intentionally very tight toleranced to ensure a good air seal. And as we're pushing this in, we're going to want to make sure that we've got it level with the top of the plunger tube. Really want to make sure that it's level. Alright, once we've got it in there at a good point, we are going to grab our Sharpie. And we're going to want to make a dotted line right at the top of this O-ring. We're going to go all the way around, and this will give us a line for 2 reasons. One, we'll know where to make marks outwards and where to put lubrication downwards for these O-rings. So, let's grab our Sharpie and make a small dashed ring around the outside so we know where to work with. Alright, that should be all that we need. We can now remove the piece, being careful to not mess with the O-rings. this to the side for now. Okay. We now have a very important step of cutting up the inside of this tube. We're going to want to do this with a sharp X-Acto blade, being very careful. This is done so that we can give more surface area to match these X's to give the glue to contact. Alright, the best way I have found to do this is to set it on a nice flat surface, grab your X-Acto blade, find your nice starting point, and then you're going to want to go at an angle. Rotate the tube away from you, and keep going at an angle. Now you are really going to want to scratch this thing up. It's very important to it having a good seal, but also do your very best to not go below the dotted line. We want all the marks to be above. And I'm going to do a lot more cutting, but I want to give an example. Switch it the other way, and do the same thing. This way, you've got crosses going both directions. I'm going to do this for a while, and get back when it's finished. Alright, I think we're just about good. Give it a good look at the camera. See a very scratched up surface on the inside. I might even go just a little bit more. Got many scratches going opposite directions that will perfectly coincide with the X's. Alright, gonna go a bit more. Alright, I am pretty happy with that. Can now continue on to the hardest part of this. We are going to grab our pusher rear again and get our epoxy ready. Now take our lubricant of choice. Actually, we're going to do this step after the glue because that's going to be right before. So we'll get our glue and start mixing it up. I highly recommend wearing gloves for this step. I'm going to be extremely careful. And as I said, I would highly recommend using epoxy. Super glue will break over time if you go with that. Alright, got a good bit there. Get my cap back on. This has a very quick set time, so once it's all mixed up, we've got to work real quick. Once it's thoroughly mixed, we'll grab our lube and we're going to place below, this is very important, place a ring below the line. At least 5 millimeters below it. Okay, that will be plenty. We can now start to dry fit the plunger very carefully back into the top. Keep in mind that we're on a very tight time schedule because of the glue. And get right to where the X's start. Now, we're going to carefully apply the glue along these X's, doing our best to not make a mess. Make sure not to leave any parts uncovered. Nice even coating. Okay, we can now carefully and slowly push this into place. Once again, you really should be wearing gloves. You don't want this on your hands. I am choosing to go the stupid route. I would highly recommend grabbing the pusher front without putting the O-ring in between, but merely as a way to help you doing this step. And we're going to wipe it off after. And use this, push it on the table if you have to get this down into place. All right, we'll see if we've got that pretty level using this method. Now you're going to want to wipe this off really quick. Make sure that we don't get any on here. Perfect. We'll set that on the side for now. And also, we see we got tons of excess dripping here. We do not want that, so let's take a paper towel. A nice wipe around. Grab another one. And this way, we have pretty successfully applied lube to the inside for the O-rings and glue to glue this in place. All right, I'm going to do a little bit more cleanup on this, but we are good for the next step. You're going to want to let this cure for at least 24 hours. It is very important to go through the whole cure cycle of whatever your package says. All right, on to the next. Okay, I'm going to be filming the next portion of this outside of my porch so that I have good airflow, as the next thing that we're going to need to do relates to the spring guide. A very important aspect of this is using a smooth build plate, which I still don't have. And if you don't, you are going to need to do this or you're going to have some serious trigger resistance. I'd recommend using both a file and sandpaper, but I am just going to be using a file today, just to go over it quickly. I'm going to do some of that, and we'll be good with this step. You're going to want to make sure you have this surface very smooth. Then just make sure to clean up the area with some wet paper towels and the piece to make sure you limit your microplastic inhalation, and we will be good to move on to the next step. All right, the next step is going to be assembling the rest of the pusher. Now, I don't have the completed part as the glue is still drying for me, but I'm going to treat this as if this has the plunger tube on the end. The assembly is still going to be the same. So, what we're going to want to do first is grab our in-between O-ring, one in the package. We're going to want to carefully stretch this around. And once that's there, we're going to want to take a thin line of lubricant and run it around the inside of here. Don't want to totally drench it, but make sure there's a good bit. Then, using these alignment pieces, we will put these together, and it will be a pretty tight fit with the O-ring, but that's intentional. Alright, once those two are together, we can grab 6 screws from the kit and put them in. And we're going to want to screw those in as tight as we can reasonably make them without hurting yourself. You can also just super glue these two parts together, but I would not recommend that. It's nice to be able to have the option to change the pusher in case it breaks. Alright, once our 6 screws are secured, we can grab the smaller O-ring of the 2 left and apply that to our front as our pusher. That will complete the front section of the O-ring. Now, the last thing that we're going to want to do to prepare the pusher front is put in the bolts in the side. Get them going and start screwing them in. All right, and that is done. All right, now we're going to build the plunger. So for this, you're going to need, this would be the slightly shorter piece of threaded rod from the kit. You would need the moose nut if your kit has one. In my context, I'm going to have the carbon fiber printed piece at the end instead, but your kit might have that. And since I'm using that, it's going to have this plastic piece to act as the catch. That means this will also have one extra stop nut to go in the back. Normally your kit will have 2 or 3. Another important aspect, washer. Then we need the plunger, Loctite, and a pair of pliers. So the one that I'm going to be assembling, as with most of this video, is a slightly different version, but it's going to be the same. Slightly different version. So first thing that we're going to want to do is take our plunger and our threaded rod and just thread it all the way through. It's intentionally a bit of a tight tolerance, so this is going to take a little while, but just get this all the way through. Alright, once we have the threaded rod installed all the way down on the plunger, we're going to want to take 2 of the plastic stop nuts and thread them on. Now you're probably going to want a pair of channel locks for this part so that you can grab the rod in the back. Now there's not going to be as much on yours, like I said, different version. Grab this. And then take the stop nut up at the front and twist this past the plastic where it wants to stop. We want to dry fit these once before thread locking them in. And just push through the plastic at least once. And since that's the one going on first, I'm just going to start applying thread lock now. Now make sure you put a paper towel or something underneath. You don't want this getting on your surfaces or your table. Oh, and one other very important note. I'm going to take this off. This washer goes down. It's very important. So help preserve the life of the plunger. So, order of operations, we've got the rod in, then we grab our washer. We're going to take our first nut that we just thread down and make sure that's ready. Grab our thread lock and just put a good drop or 2. Doesn't take too much, a little goes a long way on this. And I will thread that back on. Also keep in mind, thread lock takes a while to set. Definitely let that sit overnight as well. Now that we have completed the plunger tube assembly and the plunger itself, we can put a few of the pieces together before we continue. To start, we can take the plunger tube assembly and run a line of lubricant around the top. I've already done this, so I don't have to add any more. Then, we can put our plunger in. Then we're going to take both springs. I'm going to show you how to put them together for the highest power option. Now I'd recommend making sure that they line up at least at one side, and that's the side that will go into the spring guide. Take the other end, put on the plunger, and this can now be set to the side for later. And for the next step, we are going to want to insert the heat set inserts into the back of the spring guide and the back of the trigger. So I'm going to turn my soldering iron on and pre-position the trigger and the spring guide. First heat set insert is going to go right back here. When doing heat set inserts, turn the temperature up to at least 700 and press down as hard as I can. Perfect. And now we can do the trigger. So I'll line that up first. Grab the soldering iron and do the same. Perfect. Alright, that completes this step. We can now move on to the main assembly of Greg. We're going to need the bolt guide, the trigger, the grip, trigger guard, and grip left and right. From the parts kit, we're going to need the longer of the short pieces of threaded rod and a piece of elastic. Going to also need a handful of screws, a screwdriver, and something to cut the elastic. First things first, I'm going to take the trigger and line it up in the piece. Now, since the bottom will have the heat set insert, we're going to take this and put it through the top. Pull this all the way through so that your knot is sitting inside the hole at the top. Now, run this through here. Oop. Now, it might be easier to do this the other way, but I find this to be much easier. And once that's in, I'll grab my tool and grab that from in there. Now, I'm pull this as tight as I can. I would use a pair of channel locks if you don't have this. I'm going to pull it as tight as I reasonably can and click down on here. And once I got that, I'm going to be able to tie this knot very easy. Like I said, just use a pair of channel locks if you do not have this tool. So once again, tying a double knot, very important. Once I've got that double knot tied, I can let this go, test fit it, perfect. Trigger working exactly as it's supposed to. So I'm going to pull this back up, cut some extra, go to the back, and cut some extra. Alright, trigger is now installed. Now we can move on to the grip. You want to take the body, flip it upside down, take your grip, use your left hand to hold these both in place at the same time. Then, get a screw in here, put this back down, and we're going to install the grip. Alright. Installed now. You really want to tighten this one down as far as it goes. Okay. We are then going to grab, oh, I got this side first of the grip. And you're going to want to slide in from the top. So we slide in here, and the back will pop in. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Oh, there goes my trigger linkage. Yep, all right, perfect. All right, now we can start installing some more screws. Once again, just making sure that the grip is as tight as it goes. And we'll start down here. One. Oh, right. Nothing to screw into this one yet, and I forgot that's the trigger guard, so we're not going to do that one next. Don't make the same mistake as me. We'll go to the front. Perfect. And one more in front of that. I'm going to turn around, do the same thing here. All right, we now have most of the grip installed. Last step is our trigger guard. We'll start with putting this in here, and that will just fit right in there. We'll do these two on the side first. And last, one right here. All right, that is the bolt guide assembled. We can now continue on with the next step. For this, you're going to need the breech, the magwell, the flared magwell, the longer of the two springs, one of the 25 by 3mm pins, and the mag release. We're also going to need the two long pieces of flat bar. To start, we're going to want to take our breech and put the magwell. We're going to want to make sure that this indent lines up with the front, and it will push into this dovetail. Once it's in there, we can secure it with 4 screws. Alright, once we've got the magwell installed, we can put that to the side briefly. Take back our bolt guide from before, and start putting in our long pieces of bar. Ooh, dropped a few pieces. We're going to want to make sure that we're going to put the bar in on both sides and make it about even for now. And once we do this, we'll have 2 long pieces of bar sticking out either way. We're going to take the breech from this end and put it onto the bars. And just slide it down. Make sure the bars poke through the front. one. Sometimes the bottom of where the print happens can have a little bit higher tolerances. Sometimes if it gets stuck, it's worth trying to push it in through the other way. So that we've got both ends sticking through, we can briefly pull them back apart again. And we are going to need to do a few things. First, we're going to want to grab 2 of the 3x14mm pins and put them into the 2 holes up on the top. And these are our alignment pins. So we've got one on the left, one on the right, and this is where your hammer might come in handy. Just tap those in. Or be like me and use anything other than a hammer as a hammer. Once those are there, we can put our attention on the catch. To start, you're going to want to angle this up towards yourself. I'm going to do my best to make sure we get this on camera. And we'll be able to see a hole in the inside. Mine is actually still a little bit closed off by print artifacts. So I'm going to clean that up. There we go. You can see it nice and clear. Once we've got that all opened up, I'm going to put part of the spring in there. Now, before we go through with the rest of the catch, it will probably be a better idea to put your pin in now, so we can easily constrain it once it's ready. You'll notice there are 2 holes. This will go in the bottom one. So, grab our catch, put the spring into the back, this part can be a little tricky, and once we're here, currently holding the spring in place with this, I'm going to push it down carefully, and then push the pin through. It takes a little bit of guesswork to make sure you got it right. There we go. It can be a little bit difficult to get. And once we've got it in there, grab your hammer and tap through the rest of the way. We'll now see our metal catch sticking out like this with the force of the spring, which is perfect. Okay, now we can take this, slide it back down and into place. Now there might be a little bit of resistance from the 3mm pins, but that's okay. Just push them together. Perfect. Exactly. Alright, so now we can see very little space between the two. Now we can install the flared magwell. So we'll flip it upside down for now. Grab this piece, and we'll notice there's a dovetail up here in the front and interlocking with this here. So we'll start with the front end, get it into this dovetail, and we're going to take these 2 pieces on the outside and gently flare them. Careful not to break anything. You're going to need to pull it forward and flare it at the same time so then it can get around this front. And it should sit in place really nicely. There we go. So once it's roughly sitting in place, we have 2 more slots for more screws. But to do this, you're going to need to press it together. Let me do my best to get this on camera. Push these together, grab a screw, and get this flared magwell installed. Perfect. The breech is now assembled. We can now move on to the next step. Alright, we are now going to install the catch onto the spring guide. To do this, we're going to need the catch holder, the smaller of the 2 springs, the catch piece. If you have a metal, there'll be 2. If you have the plastic version, it'll look like this. Just be 1 contained unit. Or for the metal one, it's 2. You want to take the smaller spring. Make sure that this wraps around this very nice. It's on there well. Carefully aim this in here. Push down. Oops. There we go. Good. It's going to be a little finicky, so I'm going to take this. Okay, now we can take 2 pins and put them on these 2 slots on the top. Once those are good, we'll grab our catch again. Now, grab this with 1 hand, and while we're doing this, grab your lubricant again, and just put a very generous amount on the inside here. I would much more recommend a grease, but this is not permanent. But make sure you got something in there. Make sure your whole catch is in there, and this. And we will put this to the side one last time. We can now grab our catch pusher and the last 25 by 3mm pin and prepare to install. So we'll take the pin, put it in on the right side, take our catch pusher, make sure that we have the side with the hole lining up with the trigger linkage. And we're going to want to fit this in just like, oh, make sure that rim is deburred. We will carefully tap this into place. Alright, so now we have this at the top, and we can carefully grab our pieces of catch from before, and now we can install them. Now, this is going to be a bit of a pain because this is under spring tension, but if we grab this, bring it upside down, it shouldn't be too bad. So, I'm going to make sure that this is caught here. Put these down. Oh yeah, it's not going to like this. Try to get it in a half-happy state. try holding down with a screwdriver. Reminds me of the days of anti-reversal latches on airsoft guns. Catch pusher. Good. Pins down. Pins down. Good. A little bit of a pain. Make sure that it's working. Test out the spring. Perfect. Working catch. Make sure we could see it depress all the way from the back. Perfect. All right. Can now screw that into place with these back two. Make sure your catch still actuates. Perfect. Exactly as it should be. All right. We can put this to the side and continue on with the rest. We are now getting to some of the larger steps for Greg. We're going to need the trigger linkage, the spring guide that we just put together, and the plunger assembly. First, we'll take the plunger assembly and put it into the blaster. Perfect. Then, take our trigger linkage, put it in the back, hole right here, and screw it into our heat set insert that we put in the trigger. Make sure that's working with your trigger. You'll see them linked. Perfect. And this might require a little bit of adjusting. I would highly recommend using thread locker for this if you do not want to open it up and adjust it regularly. A little bit of thread locker will go a long way there in between the heat set insert and the threaded rod. Now we can take this, carefully move it forward, and we're going to slide this on to the back. Make sure the trigger linkage goes in as well. I'll hold you up. The spring up in here. Perfect. Perfect. All right. Spring guide is now on. We can push the bars a little bit forward. And this will set up perfectly for our next step. Quick note that I forgot to add in. I'm going to want to take these two apart. And we need to put in our alignment pins. So there is one here, and then the same on the opposite side. So 4 in total. And that's to make sure that this doesn't bend at any point on either side. So grab our pins, tap them in. There's 1 and 2. We'll flip the blaster around. Now we can push these two pieces together. Perfect. And now we can continue on to the next step. We can now just about finish the rear half of the blaster. To do this, we're going to need the stock, the TPU section, 2 alignment pins, 4 screws, and 2 of the long silver bolts. To start, we'll take the piece of the stock with the hole and put that in towards here. And this is so the plunger rod can travel its full length. That will slide on there, just like that. Oh, I guess you're not going to need the alignment pins for that. Scratch that. And we'll take the stock part of the TPU. And these will push the flat bar right into place. And you want to grab the rest of the blaster at the same time. And push everything up into place. Perfect. Alright, so that's there. I'm going to take off the stock and combine these two sections. Okay, once the two parts of the stocks are back attached, our bars are properly length, we can put this through. Now, we're going to want to grab our two long bolts, 4mm Allen wrench, and we're going to want to thread these through. You might have to adjust your bars a little bit to make sure that they're in the proper place. Which I'd recommend from a little bit of tapping with the hammer from the other side. Okay, perfect. It might help you to set the blaster up while you're doing this so the weight compresses it into place. Okay, that's how it'll look when fully installed. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and we will get to the next step. Alright, we're now going to go over some of the final steps of putting your entire blaster together. So far, we'll have everything connected from the breech back. We're just going to have these front bars exposed. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is take our long section of threaded rod, and we're going to want to put it through the blaster and screw it in to the heat set insert we put in earlier. This might be a little bit difficult. Just a matter of pushing back and forth. We'll get it. You may need a pair of pliers to get this in to the heat set insert. And I do. So I'm just gonna walk this in to the insert until it has just about hit flush with the back side of it. I'm going to twist it in all the way, as this is what's going to tension our entire blaster together. So I'll give it a few more twists and then check in the back. I still got a good bit to go. Sure, you can tap in a little bit, get yourself to the threaded insert. All right. All right, I'm about halfway there. This a little bit back so I can see the next step. We're going to do a few things. Next, we are going to need the two remaining front bolts. We're also going to need the thumb screw and the one remaining nut. We're going to need the barrel collet, the one remaining O-ring, the large one, our barrel, and the front. All right, so I'm going to take my front piece, line up each one of the bars and the threaded rod, and slide it down. Perfect. Now, my blaster is pulling itself apart a little bit from the spring, so I'm not going to be able to perfectly get this on camera while I'm doing it, but I will show you. You're going to have to push it together, and once it's there, that will be exposed. So what we're going to do next See if I can make this stick. There we go. Okay, and we're going to want to grab our thumb screw, grab the nut, and make sure that's sitting flat inside, just like that. And then we'll screw this on to the front. All right, we'll continue screwing that down until it pulls the whole blaster together. And you don't want to go as tight as you can yet, but we just want to pull it together so that we can do the other bolts up in front. It might help to set the blaster up like this. Use the weight of the pieces against itself, and I recommend doing that. All right, I've now got that thumb screw super tight, and we can get in the remaining bolts. So, all we have left up here is this and this. So, grab this bolt here, screw in, all right, those are the last two bolts for the front. Now we will get to the barrel. Now, if your barrel does not have a chamfer or chamber on one side, you're going to need to do that with your deburring tool. Next step is take your barrel nut and put it on. Then take the largest O-ring, the one that's left, and put it on the barrel. And all we have to do to put this on, push this in, make sure that goes on the pusher, push our O-ring down, make sure that this doesn't get caught on anything, and just start screwing it in. You now have a mostly completed Greg. There's still some final steps to go over, like putting the carry handle, finishing the mag, but this is mostly it, and we'll get some overall shots in a second. We are now going to build the handle for Big Greg. We're going to need the remaining 4 larger bolts, 2 small 3x14mm pins, the 4 nuts and bolts that came with this that clearly don't go to anything else, and just a 4mm Allen wrench to screw those in, plus a screwdriver for these. Alright, to start, we're going to take our 2 pins and hammer them in. Alright, once we've got the pins in, we can take the 2 pieces and push them together, make sure that they're aligned. And once those are good, we can take our 2 sides of the handle and attach them to the centerpiece. Now we're going to want to make sure both of these are on the same side. Flat side on the bottom, flat side on the bottom. We'll take this completed piece and put it on here. We want to make sure that this flat piece and this flat piece align, just like that. And it's the same for the other side. Alright, I'm going to screw those in, and then we will install the pieces in the rail. Alright, we want to make sure that's not too tight, but decently. I'll loosen this just a little bit, not too much. Perfect. Alright, 2 sides are together. Now the last step, you're going to end up having to take these off to install them, but it's just good to have them in place for now. Just simply put the nut in there, the bolt on this side, and just screw them in so they don't get lost. So that's the handle completed, and now we'll work on the 0-degree riser behind, which all you have to do is just put in the hardware. Alright, those 2 are done, and we will install them on the blaster as our last step. Alright, We're now going to do some of our final assembly of the blaster, which is just going to include some of the basic maintenance that you need to do. One of the things that I forgot to do while putting it together was make sure that you get some lubricant on the pusher O-ring. It's very, very important, along with the camphor on the barrel. So that's one of the things that we're going to want to do. We've already got almost everything else prepared, so now it's just going to be a matter of putting on the carry handle. I'm going to get on the carry handle, get the mag on, the B-car, and we'll be good to take some final pictures. So there is multiple variations of the B-car. Most of the ones that are out at this point are going to have a collet system and will twist down, but there are also some variants depending on the testing versions that you're using that will just friction fit onto the barrel. The one that I have in this video still friction fits on, but there are other ones that twist fit on, and I'll have a video of that thrown in here at some point as well. Oop, dropped a piece. Now I'm going to slide the blaster forward, show you where about I'm going to be assembling these, get my handle ready. Alright, so we're going to slide the handle on first, and we're going to go from the back, since the thumb screw is still in the front. Make some certifiedly terrible noises. Alright, that's looking pretty good. I'll take my 0-degree riser, slide that on the back as well. Perfect. Alright. So I've now got on the handle and the riser. I'm going to check those out really quick, see if those are happy with that placement. Afterwards, we'll install our B-car, and we'll mostly be done. And after a little bit of trial and error, you have to make sure that the handle goes onto the right side of the blaster. That's very important so that it fits in place. It's going to be a really snug fit to get the handle down on. I'm going to cap mine on. It has to be to the right, or else it will not work. I'm going to screw the rest of that in place, and then we will get to the final bits of assembly. Alright, now getting towards finishing up, our last two steps are going to be assembling the mag and putting together the B-car, then just some general blaster maintenance and getting everything together. Alright, so to assemble the mag, we are going to need the cap, the body, the follower, a drum spring, singular drum spring, a piece of string, and one screw. Alright, so this is how this is going to work. We're going to take our drum spring, and you'll notice there's a top and bottom hole. We're going to go in from the top, feed it through, and then as we're feeding it through, I'm going to grab my screwdriver to do this. Make sure I get on camera, push this down, and push from the top at the same time. Oop, messed that one up. Let me try again. And push down. Might give you a little bit of resistance at first, but keep pushing it. We'll go. There we go. Okay, just locked into place. So now that drum spring is in there. Perfect. So now what we're going to want to do is take a piece of string and thread it through the drum spring. The piece of string is going to need to be about 1 foot long at minimum. You're going to take these two ends and drop them through down to the other side. So now these are down at the bottom. I'll hold these up at the top, make sure they don't fall. Down here, grab both ends of my string. You probably want a bit longer than I have here, make this easier on yourself. Okay, so now I've got both of these. I'm going to carefully pull this up. We can see that this is going to ride along the middle rail that's there, that it's meant to. We don't want this to twist around too much, so carefully grab this with our left hand, hold this off to the side, grab our follower, And we'll notice this only goes in one way. There's this, and then there's the 5 alignment knobs. There's not one here, not one here. So we're going to take this. Now, don't drop it in yet. Hold it to the side and carefully take your spring back down and let it fall into that. Carefully pull your string out and your spring should snap right into place. All you have to do is, perfect. And just like that, completed mag. Now to finish this off, grab our cap, grab the nose of it, hook it into the front, and pop into place. Singular screw. And that's how your mag is completed. Okay, we have now reached the very end of the Big Greg build process. We've got our handles attached, the blaster is finished. The last thing we have to do is attach the spacer for the short mag well, the short length mag. This will go here. I'm not going to screw it in place for now, just to show you, but you just had 2 screws there. And our last piece is the B-car. Now mine is going to friction fit on, but yours will very likely twist on, depending on the version you have. And that will complete our Big Greg build guide.